Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Archer-Copper, and I'm an educational specialist and a psychologist assistant at the Wellness Center in Grand Cayman. This presentation is about the benefits of recreational activities on both physical and mental health for neurodiverse adults. And I just want to point out that I'm going to speak about some research and some examples, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily a recipe for all. So, I'm going to discuss some keywords that will come up through the presentation. The first is recreation or recreational activities. What are they? So oftentimes we hear the terms leisure and recreation together. And just to point out a key difference here, leisure activities refer to the activities that we do during our free time when we don't have obligations. So participating in leisure activities can look like going for walks, watching movies at our own pace in our own time. It's just important to keep in mind that these activities can be done spontaneously, again, with no obligations. Now, recreational activities, on the other hand, are a more structured form of leisure time. So typically, recreational activities involve some form of physical exertion, and they are implemented to help develop, maintain, and improve our fitness and our health. So let's use walking as an example, since it can be considered as both a leisure and recreational activity. So if you're walking for leisure, you may take a walk spontaneously with no specific destination in mind. But if you're walking for recreation, you may have a specific route and pace that you follow to get you to and from your destination. You may be part of a walking group that does this on a regular basis. And you may set specific target goals, such as I want to walk to and from my house in under 20 minutes by the end of next week. So moving right along to group activities. So these are just activities that take place within a group of at least 2 people. So we want to see some form of engagement or interaction that occurs among members who do share a common interest. Now, with physical health, this generally refers to good body health, which we can achieve and maintain with regular exercise, good eating habits, and getting the right amounts, required amounts of sleep. Now, with mental health, this is generally referring to one's cognitive and emotional well-being. So how we think and how we feel. And last but not least, we have neurodiverse adults. So this focuses on individuals who are 18 years and older, which are considered to be adults. And neurodiverse just means that people experience and interact with the world around them in different ways. And in this presentation, I will reference primarily adults with autism spectrum disorders and adults with intellectual disabilities. All right, so what can autism spectrum disorder in an adult might look like? So we may see difficulty interpreting what others are thinking or feeling, trouble interpreting facial expressions such as body language or social cues. It may be hard to just regulate emotions. There may experience difficulties with keeping up conversations in social settings. And not just keeping up conversations, but difficulties with maintaining the natural flow of a conversation. There's also the tendency to engage in repetitive or routine behaviors, as well as the tendency to only participate in restricted range of activities. So, now we're going to look at what intellectual disability in an adult may look like. And that may look like difficulty reading or speaking, understanding social cues. You have some issues remembering or recalling certain things, the inability to perform routine tasks such as dressing oneself. There's a reliance on nonverbal communication. So there's some difficulties regulating or expressing emotions. There's, sometimes people are unable to problem solve or think logically. And sometimes there's behavior that is inconsistent with age. And what I wanted to mention here as well is that I wanted to speak about ASD and ID, or autism spectrum disorder and intellectual disability, separately, because while they do co-occur at high rates, many people, it is important to note that many people with autism spectrum disorder do have high or average or above average intelligences. So that's why I felt like it was important to distinguish the two. So now let's look at physical health concerns that can be observed in adults with ASD and or ID. So when I was exploring past and current research conducted primarily in North America, we see things like the motor skills observed from childhood, both in ASD and ID. So an example of that is you're trying to grip something and you might have a weaker grip. There's an increased likelihood of a sedentary lifestyle. So where you're lounging, where you tend to be lying down a little bit more. And this is more notably noticed in individuals with ID. And actually sedentary behavior has recently, as of 2020, been recognized by the World Health Organization as a significant contributor to poor health outcomes. So moving right along, we also have an increased likelihood of diabetes in individuals with ID, higher body mass index or BMI, increased risk of cardiovascular diseases, increased risk of stroke. And there's a link between ASD and traits of Parkinson's disease in adults who are over 39 years old. So we have this high frequency of Parkinson's, and it's actually a progressive neurological disease that basically affects the way you move, and it is categorized by body tremors and stiff muscles and limbs, slow movement, and difficulties with balance. So I think that this is important to keep in mind when we want to look at some of the physical health benefits of recreation, and that can include building and maintaining the muscle strength and endurance, improving your balance and mobility and in coordination, improving flexibility, that cardiovascular fitness. You can be able to improve the cognitive function as well, so where you're feeling more alert and you're able to concentrate and apply yourself to the task at hand, and also just maintaining a healthy body weight. So these are all things that can be accomplished with certain recreational activities. But it's just important to note that you want to be able to choose a recreational activity that is in line with some of your capabilities as well. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to look at some of the mental health concerns that are observed in adults with ASD and or ID. So here what we're seeing is increased rates of social isolation. We're looking at higher risk of loneliness, fewer high quality friendships. So many youth with ASD especially, they report they're having no friends at all, or they categorize the types of friendships that they have as lacking responsiveness or lacking reciprocity or overall quality of communications or problems there. And those communication problems are often correlate with that inability to develop high quality social relationships. So limited social support networks as well. So we have social isolation, we have loneliness, and a lack of friends really go hand in hand with limited social support networks. And then I wanted to mention depression as well, because it is definitely something that I've witnessed and heard about, whether it's through close connections, networks, throughout my years, pretty frequently throughout my years working with these populations in both private and public community-based settings. All right, so what I want to just point out as well is that Sometimes people think that people with ASD especially try to avoid social relationships. And while this may be the case in some cases, this may be true. Research has shown that adolescents and adults tend to express themselves, or they express interest in having these social relationships and these meaningful friendships. However, it's because they often lack those social skills and insights that are needed to develop or maintain these relationships. And just another thing that I noted in the research was that there's there's something to be said about the important role that families of neurodiverse individuals play in their continuing development throughout their adulthood. All right, so now what I want to do is discuss some mental health benefits of recreation. So with mental health, we really want to look at this sense of belonging and purpose. So that looks like increased opportunities to form bonds, to develop and maintain friendships and relationships, and just being a part of a community, and to have this confidence in yourself. Especially when you're in a recreational group activity and you feel as though you're in a safe space and that you can express yourself freely. And typically, that confidence comes from practicing, because the more you practice, the more you become better at whatever you're applying yourself to. We can also see acceptance from others, so acceptance from the group that are oftentimes going through similar things that you are. And with that also comes self-acceptance. We also see an increase in self-esteem. And emotional regulation as well. So with group activities, you're part of a team of different people that come from, that may or may not have different personalities or have different backgrounds. And so you have these learning opportunities when you're in these group situations to learn how to adapt to others and regulate your own emotions in order to accomplish that shared goal. And here I'm thinking easily just about team sports. Okay, so next, I want to talk just a bit about some tips for participating in a recreational group activity or for leading a group activity. So with that, we talk about, I'm going to talk about adults, and then I'm also going to talk about facilitators. So just to note as well, there are so many tips out there, and some will work for you and others won't. So just feel free to try them out and pick and choose what works best for you. So for adults, start with the intent of a leisure activity, with maybe that's something that's kind of a little bit more, could be something that's spontaneous in the sense that it's not something that you necessarily have to commit to on a regular basis right away, because commitment may come with, have peer pressures that come with that. So, pick that, maybe something that's based on a common interest, such as walking, going for a run. So maybe one day or one afternoon, try it out. And then reflect on that and assess it. See how it felt for you. See if it's something that can be incorporated into your current routine. And at the end of the day, what I just want to leave off on is just don't force yourself. The health benefits are meant to be there for you, not anyone else. So now I want to turn the page to facilitators. So this is for people who may be interested in leading a recreational activity for neurodiverse adults. So I feel it's always good to start out with a needs assessment. So just see if it's something that people would actually be interested in first. See if you can connect with community resource centers, if you can conduct online surveys, employment centers, you name it. Just see if there's an interest first. And you should also have a good knowledge and experience with both the activity that you wish to lead, as well as your population. So do this research beforehand. If it's a dance group, for example, What about motor abilities? What about accommodations? So really know your population. I'd also suggest that groups of 6 to 8 are ideal, just because, I think that anything more than that, it can start to get a little bit overwhelming when your aim and your goal is to really personalize and tailor that activity and make sure that every person that attends that activity, hopefully that their needs are met. And so throughout the activity, you want to focus on their strengths and not their weaknesses. So we want to include a lot of positive reinforcement, encourage confidence, and encourage just celebrating wins. And you may have a certain structure or flow going into the activity, which is great, but just be sure to constantly evaluate that and adapt. So just ensure that it works well with the group that you have, because groups will always be different. Nobody is the same. And again, if it's dance, you may have conducted or created this wonderful, beautifully structured routine, and you come and you notice that the group enjoys creative movement or freestyle instead. So just be aware of this and adapt to their needs and interests. See if it's challenging or not, it's too challenging, not challenging enough, and just always have at least 2 to 3 backup plans. So you do this through communication, ask for feedback. And just create and foster a safe space for inclusion, because you set the tone essentially for what is acceptable and what is unacceptable behavior to be able to maintain a safe space for the group. So just remember that even though you may see therapeutic benefits to this as well, these are recreation activities, so they're not necessarily meant to be therapy sessions. And if you see participants that are lacking motivation at some point, try to create a social team activity within the group. You can reach out beforehand and ask them their favorite songs as motivational tools or anything at all. And last but not least, if you are willing to try, don't beat yourself up if you see that participants are actually not as receptive. So next, I actually just want to talk about peers for young adults. So maybe you know someone, or you yourself may want to join a recreational activity, a group activity, but you're a bit nervous or you're apprehensive about the social aspects that come along with just meeting new people, interacting, and perhaps making new friends. So one great program that I just want to point out is the Program for Education and Enrichment of Relational Skills, which is Peers for Young Adults. Now, this is one program, and there are others. So it's a 16-week evidence-based social skills intervention for motivated young adults, ages 18 to 30, who are interested in learning skills to make and keep friends, develop relationships, and manage in conflict and rejections. And the lessons are based on ecologically valid social skills, which means that there is good proof that this works out there in the real world. And the author Piers notes that while the intervention is intended for adults without significant cognitive impairments, it has been tested extensively with autism spectrum disorder, but it's also been tested with individuals with intellectual disabilities, but just to a lesser extent. So it's just important to keep that in mind when deciding if that's for you. And I also just wanted to highlight the word motivated, because it's such an important factor. So whether it's someone that you know or it's you should have some desire. So again, don't force yourself. And some of the skills that are taught and practiced during the group session include things like using appropriate conversational skills, finding common interests by trading information, using humor appropriately, entering and exiting conversations between peers, handling rejection, being a good sport, handling arguments and disagreements, and dealing with peer pressure. So these are all great skills to have when you want to consider joining a recreational group activity. And currently, Peers group is being run at the Wellness Center. All right, so now I just want to segue and talk a little bit about some of the past and current programs that have worked pretty well in Canada. So I've had the pleasure of participating in 2 recreational programs back in my hometown of Montreal. And the first is actually a program that I founded. It's called Dance Today with Alyssa Ray. And this program was specifically designed for adults on the spectrum, 25 and above. And it came about because for years, like I mentioned before, I worked in private and public schools and community-based settings with the neurodiverse population, mainly with children and teens, designing and running various leisure and recreational activities. And I would say that oftentimes I would see and here, I would ask both participants and their parents for feedback. And something that I kept hearing over and over again was, this is great, but do you also run programs for adults? Or I'm happy with what I see from my child or my teen, but I'm worried about when they get to a certain age and options for activities drop dramatically, and recreational activities in particular. And so we would get into these discussions, which would eventually lead me to do some of my own research and take action. But what I didn't realize at the time was that I was exploring a needs assessment and that I was responding to that. So I was able to speak to government officials in my city at the municipal level at the time to explain the importance of the program, and really to my surprise and my delight, I was granted some studio space. And this allowed me to charge affordable rates, and I kept the group small so that I can personalize it and that it wasn't so overwhelming. I started with 5 sessions, and then I eventually increased that to 8 sessions so that there was this repetitive weekly commitment that was integrated into their routine. I would always do a check-in before and after, just integrate some fitness, that was meant to challenge them accordingly. But, just based on, knowledge that I would gather of physical abilities, my goal wasn't for them to overexert themselves, but it was for them to be able to challenge themselves and to see them accomplish those challenges, which they did, but also to learn something new and fun and have a great opportunity just to interact with others who share that interest and passion for dance. And for me, it was just so incredible to see them get out of their comfort zones, to shine as they work through their dances that challenge them, and just to work on their motor skills. And towards the end of the sessions, I would see things like plans being made to go to the movies later, so people were introducing themselves to others. And I thought that was really special because you saw the bonds that were established, and I saw lasting, friendships that were formed there that have lasted to this day. And so just going back to motor skills, we worked a lot on just balance and maintaining flexibility, because that's what I saw the needs were. So that's an example of a dance program that worked really well. I also had the pleasure of teaching core self-defense exercises and techniques at a martial arts school in Montreal called École Karaté Autism in French, or Autism Karate in English. So I am a trained martial artist. I'm a first-degree black belt in the style of Kyokushin Karate, which I've practiced for over 20 years. So they offer simple and effective, well-supervised workshops lasting 60 minutes for individuals with age ranges anywhere from 3 to 60 with an autism spectrum disorder. So this program for autistic adults required qualified instructors and the presence of parents, so family involvement, or companions as well. So they currently have 200 students with an autism spectrum disorder. They practice regularly every weekend, and some of the things that come up, factors include just socializing in a group, learning to better control their physical body. So again, working on these motor skills, being aware of how the body works in physical space, developing that ability to concentrate, developing a greater self-confidence and self-esteem, and just feedback once again really kind of clarified and justified and validated all of these key points that were just mentioned. It was very similar feedback to what I received from my dance program as well. So I want to read one testimonial actually from a mother of an adult with ASD. And she says, the best experiences for my son and even for me were those where animators worked with users just to be able to best assess the path to a positive outcome. So this meaning that people took the time to get to know my son before starting the activity to make sure it was the right fit and that appropriate supportive services were being put in place. And the other important factor was that they were open to feedback from the users, and they also took the time to dialogue and just work through any issues or challenges that appeared. And so even just having that feedback at the end of the day to say how programs can be improved or what people liked best about a program, just to ensure the continuity of that aspect. All right, so now what I want to do is I actually want to talk about a program that's right here in the Cayman Islands. So for me, being fairly new to the island, I was thrilled to learn about the Special Olympics Recreation Program, as it's a great concrete example of promoting both physical and mental health for neurodiverse adults. So first off, what are the Special Olympics? So it's essentially the world's largest sports organization for people with intellectual disabilities. And they provide year-round sports training and athletic competition, just in a variety of Olympic-type sports for both children and adults with intellectual disabilities. So giving them ongoing opportunities to not only develop their physical health, but also learn new skills, meet new people with these shared interests, establish new friendships, and maintain these friendships, with other Special Olympics athletes and within the community. So again, establishing bonds, having that sense of purpose, having that sense of belonging. And so they have approximately 5.5 million athletes in 193 countries. And here in Cayman, there are 175 athletes, along with over 300 volunteers and coaches, and which is fantastic. So the Special Olympics Cayman Islands was founded in 1988, and it's run by a committee of volunteers and sports that includes stand paddleboarding, swimming, basketball, among others. So immediately I think about the balance that you need to have when you're paddleboarding, or the endurance that your body needs to have when you're swimming. Or the precision, the hand-eye coordination. There's so much more in there. And what's great is that athletes really get this opportunity to experience and participate in both local, regional, and international games, which allots an opportunity to do more traveling around the world, to make more friends who share common interests and goals in sports. So most recently, the Special Olympics Cayman Islands competed in the 2019 World Games in Abu Dhabi. So Special Olympics International is also the world's largest public health organization for people with intellectual disabilities. And at international events, athletes have this access to a wide range of free health exams. Their goal is to bring better fitness, nutrition, and healthier lifestyles to everyone involved. And also what I love about the Special Olympics in Cayman Islands is that they provide annual checks during the Healthy Athletes Fair, and they deliver the information gathered during these checks and screenings to caregivers, and then they provide recommendations for further care. And when it comes to participating in recreational activities, some neurodiverse adults may feel more comfortable or may just have a preference for activities with people who are also, on the spectrum, also neurodiverse, and people who they feel they can relate to. But while that may not be the case for others want to integrate, and some don't mind either way. So when selecting an activity to try, it's just important to think about what you feel comfortable with, and what you're open to. And the Special Olympics, they're dedicated to promoting social inclusion through the shared sports training. And what they do is they partner individuals with intellectual disabilities, so athletes, along with individuals without intellectual disabilities on their sports teams. And so their principle is that training together and playing together is that quick path to both friendship and understanding. So, we see yet again another pathway to increased mental health and well-being by just having a sense of acceptance and belonging and community, along with the many physical benefits. And the last program that I just wanted to touch base on is right here at the Wellness Center. It's the Butterfly Connection program here in Grand Cayman. So the founders are Shannon Seymour, director and clinical psychologist at the Wellness Center, as well as Dr. Chelsea Walton, clinical psychologist. And so what this is, it's a social space for neurodiverse girls and women with the intention of fostering social connections for the population while engaging in activities of shared interest. And so basically their goals are to meet with this group on a monthly basis to engage in a variety of activities together based on their interests that they have. So they get to decide the activities that they want to do for the following weeks. And it creates this sense of community and connection. For adults, the focus in particular is on networking and mentorship and leisure. And sessions like this, though they are in the form of a drop-in, but I think that sometimes you'll see people who try it out. So they see if it's something that works for them, and then others you'll see start to come back on a consistent basis. So with that being said, I just wanted to thank you so much for listening to my presentation. And just to note that your feedback is important to us. So please scan the QR code that you see right now and just tell us how we did, tell me how I did. So thank you again, and have a great day or evening.